Hello and welcome to NPC. That stands for Next Portable Console. It's a show about the games we take with us. I'm one of your three hosts, Brendon Bigley, and I'm here with Federico Batici.
Oh, hi. Hello.
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 We have a lot of stuff to talk about this week. I'm excited. I'm really excited. I've been looking forward to this episode for a couple days.
Yes.
I'm also here with John Voorhees.
Hello, hello. I'm here too.
Are you also excited?
I'm very excited. Very excited.
Great.
Would you believe it if I told you that on my desk right now I have 3 coolers?
Coolers?
What?
Like,
This will make sense in NPC XL.
We have no idea
Coolers.
what he's got
Okay.
up his sleeve.
yeah, I'm excited to see what you mean by cool, like in terms of what kinds of coolers you could have, because coolers can be interpreted a bunch of different ways.
Could be beverages.
It would be really funny if you pulled out, like,
A
just
6-pack of
3.
beer.
Yeah.
The statement is technically correct. Now
Yeah.
the details are to be discovered later
Okay.
in NPC XL.
All right.
Starting the show though, we have some follow up from last week and from a couple weeks ago. Starting with the Odin 3, the Ultra, if you can believe it. This is almost the opposite of the next piece of news. But the Odin 3 Ultra is somehow back in stock and available for pre-order if you want to sign up for batch 4 of shipping, which I'm pretty surprised by, considering the quote-unquote Ramageddon I keep hearing about in Bloomberg.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was surprised about this too. And I'm the one who put this in there because I keep finding myself back on that website thinking about the Odin 3 Ultra and looking to see, is it really as expensive as I remembered? And I'm like, yep, it really is as expensive as I remembered. And it's been unavailable for several weeks now, but now they're doing another batch of pre-orders. So it's not shipping immediately, but they are taking the orders to do that soon.
Yeah.
It's a good handheld. I really recommend it.
I
It's
know.
it's really nice. Yeah.
You're still loving yours?
Absolutely, especially because of the new Frontend you made me install, and I'm glad I listened to you. I'm going to talk about that in a couple of
Buddy,
minutes.
yeah, I'm really excited to talk about that. The other thing that we have to mention in follow-up is there's a new piece of language on the Steam Deck website. If you try to order the Steam Deck, I'm going to go to the website real quick, and I'm gonna find the piece of language. But there's a new thing that they've now put up on the Valve website if you order a Steam Deck, indicating that it is sold out across all models. And this note says, Steam Deck OLED may be out of stock intermittently in some regions due to memory and storage shortages. Steam Deck LCD 256GB is no longer in production and once sold out will no longer be available. This is like a warning on the Steam Deck shop page now. It's worth mentioning also the 256GB LCD model is already sold out, meaning that it will never be in stock again. And at least here in the US, and I know this is not true, I think, in the EU at the moment, both of the OLED models are sold out as of this recording. This is, I think, kind of the first harbinger, not first, but like the latest harbinger, I should say, of this like just impending crash of like any company that is not the size of Apple or Samsung or whoever, any like mid to low tier hardware manufacturer that needs any kind of chip at all is going to start facing these kinds of shortages just because they don't have the buying power to, be stocking up on things the way some of these other companies can. They don't have the manufacturing lines to be able to like, get this stuff in the works, which means that like the Steam Deck is now going to be an extremely hard to acquire device, which feels so wild to say out loud. All of this leads me to my big question. I have two questions about this.
Okay.
Number one, do you think here's the I guess the bigger of the two questions. Do you think the Steam machine will even come out?
I'm starting to doubt it at this point.
I am too, or at least not for several months past where they've already said it's going to be.
Yeah, you think another like a more official delay than their last
I'm thinking
kind of
more
wishy-washy
like,
statement?
Yeah, exactly. More like salvaging the holiday season.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm not going to be surprised if they say, well, we're bumping it to the holiday season. Because right now it's just impossible. So yes, that's the first answer. What's the other question?
Yeah, the other question, I guess, and this is something I've been mulling over a bit, is like Valve as a company is technically not a hardware company, right? Like technically, first and foremost, they are like a web store and then a game developer and then a hardware company, kind of in that order.
Yeah.
And the hardware is a means to an end to get more people to buy their games that they're developing and then buy more stuff on their web store. And I just wonder how long this goes on before they're like, we're not interested in being a part of this at all. You know, it's the least interesting, I think, part of their business, probably, in a certain respect, mainly because at the end of the day, and I think this is the big like dichotomy between the way people talk about Valve and their hardware products and the way Valve talks about their hardware products, which is that what people want the Steam machine to be is a competitor to the PS5 and the Xbox.
Right.
And what Valve is positioning it as is like a very, very niche Linux computer that happens to have SteamOS as the front end. And those two things can't coexist at the same time unless you are scaling in a huge way to come out of the gate and be the biggest thing.
Yeah, it's interesting. And it occurs to me too, now that we're seeing Android emulation taking off, does Valve decide that they don't need to be kind of seeding this market anymore? And they can, you know, if it's difficult to make the hardware themselves, let others take that on and just work on the software stack and making sure that the Steam library plays on devices made by others other than Valve.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's always been... I think Valve was surprised by the success of the Steam Deck, and obviously realized, well, it looks like we're capable of making hardware that people really like and finding the right balance between performance and price and compatibility. And of course, they have Proton, and Proton, you know, enables these kinds of experiences, and now Fex potentially enables similar experiences on different devices. But the reality of hardware like goes beyond an ecosystem or you know, picking the right components. Like, you got to be a massive company with a massive supply chain to weather this kind of storm that is happening right now. And if you're not Apple, if you're not Samsung, if you're not, I mean, arguably not even Google, maybe, like, unless you're one of these tech giants that have an established relationship with the supply chain in China, in Taiwan, and Vietnam now, and in India, this is what happens. You got to delay products and you got to raise prices. And I mean, if Sony and Nintendo and Samsung and Apple are struggling, with all due respect to Valve, what are the chances for them in these conditions?
It's a real bummer because, I mean, ultimately what we're talking about is shrinking the market to the big players, and then there's going to be less innovation.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. It's not hard to extrapolate this out even 2 years. Like, even 2 years of this happening shrinks the market in a pretty substantial way.
Yep.
And even what we talk about here, like handheld portable gaming, I mean, you know, Anbernic is getting, you know, the last stuff on the line, but it's possible that stuff starts drying up entirely, right? And then that's why you have things like, you know, when they announced that they were decreasing the amount of RAM in a device that they were already selling, you know?
Yeah. The only hope that companies like Anbernic have is that their chips are not good for AI, probably, because they're older chips that are not that powerful, right? But RAM is still an issue, obviously.
RAM is still an issue. Yeah, there was a report out of Bloomberg this week. Yes, and storage. There was a report out of Bloomberg this week talking, you know, kind of just leaks, I would say, leaks of information from various manufacturers, including, you know, Sony and Nintendo, and Sony saying, you know, we're not going to release the PlayStation 6 probably in 2027. It's probably 2028 or 2029 release now. They heard from people at Nintendo saying that they'll probably be increasing the price of the Switch 2 soon. And then you have things, you know, like the Steam Deck being out of stock. And a lot of this is due to the fact that, and they have a graph on the article showing that every single NVIDIA AI chip that they've released has needed twice the RAM of the previous generation. And they're releasing like 2 or 3 generations of their AI chips per year at this point.
Makes sense.
It's literally exponential. Like, it is hockey sticking upwards how much RAM they're eating up. So, I mean, that touches everything. And that's the point that I keep trying to make, like, everywhere I possibly can. Like, this is cars, this is phones, this is like small things that you would buy at like a Bed Bath and Beyond that just like happen to need a little bit of RAM. It's wild how much this is touching everything.
Yeah, it's the situation is so severe too that I guess NVIDIA is probably not going to do a consumer gaming video card this year for the first time in quite a long time.
I would assume not.
Reading too.
Yeah.
So that's a bit of a bummer news, to be honest. But
sorry, folks.
I wish there was a silver lining. I wish I could be like, and this is how we fix it. You know,
Well,
I haven't seen a single article where somebody's like, "This is how we fix it." Really,
Yeah.
Do you have an answer?
The only kind of. So if the issue is that obviously this is happening because of AI, right? And all of these AI companies that are stockpiling GPUs and GPUs. Obviously the problem, and RAM, they're stockpiling GPUs and RAM.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that the solution is that we gotta move away from GPUs and RAM to run AI models. That I know that it sounds simplistic, but stay with me. It's not simplistic. We have landed on GPUs and RAM because they're faster than CPUs when it comes to running these mathematical models, right? At a large scale with good performance. The real trick would be in getting rid of that dependency altogether. And there are some very, very, very early signs of that. You got to take a look at 2 acquisitions lately. NVIDIA itself acquiring or entering in a partnership agreement. That's now what these things are called. With a company called Grok, not the Elon Musk company.
Different Grok.
This is Grok with a Q, which came up with... So this Grok company, they have this special type of chip that is not really a GPU and it's not really RAM. And they can run AI models much more quickly than even a top-of-the-line, state-of-the-art NVIDIA GPU. And similarly, OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT, also entered in a partnership agreement with Cerebras, which is another company that also from America that makes another type of chip, a giant wafer-style chip that is not a GPU, it's not a CPU, it's not RAM, it's something different, and it's used for running AI.
Yeah.
And now,
it's
obviously,
the size of a dinner plate, I think.
Yes,
right?
it's huge. It's a huge chip. Now, obviously, the disadvantage is that these things cannot be mass-produced yet, like RAM or GPUs, because they're heavily custom. But that's the hope, eventually, that these AI companies will eventually move to custom technology, custom silicon that doesn't necessarily impact the RAM or the GPUs or the SSDs that regular folks like us want to buy for our computers and handhelds. And instead, everything is going to move away to custom technology that you wouldn't buy for yourself as a regular person.
I think it's worth mentioning here also that the main supplier of RAM and storage right now for all of these companies is Samsung, who are also obviously supplying, as you're saying, Federico, all the consumer RAM and SSDs as well. And just like Apple moving to creating their own chips, a lot of these companies, I would imagine, wouldn't want to be reliant on a company like Samsung, the same way Apple was reliant on Samsung for a long time as well. And I guess still is for panels, but that's a whole other issue. But that taking the load off of Samsung, and then Samsung simultaneously being like, oh no, we lost a huge buyer. What do we do to make up for it? Hopefully the answer to that is scale with consumer goods. And then that decreases prices. That's a possibility. That'd be nice.
Yeah. Anyway, let's move away from the
let's get out of here.
From the
hit the eject button
of the market and AI.
That's enough economics and AI.
Brendon, you turned both me and John onto this new Android front end. That is one of the best things that I've tried on Android lately. Can we talk about it?
Yeah. So there's this front end that entered beta in 2.0, almost right after we finished recording last week's episode, and it's called Cocoon. And Cocoon is worth mentioning at the top. It has been out for a while, right? This is a 2.0 beta. It's been in 1.0 for a while, and I remember testing it. That launched around when ISU was starting to kind of bubble up as well. Right. It kind of spawned as a competitor to ISU's demo video before there was a usable version of ISU that you could check out, and then all that stuff fell apart internally and all that other stuff. And I remember checking out Cocoon and just having kind of a rough time with it. It seemed like a good foundation for something, but it didn't seem like a really usable product unless you were really into the idea of sitting there and spending like no joke, like actually hours customizing every single icon, every single wallpaper, every background, et cetera, et cetera. But again, it was a nice foundation. And the 2.0 update that came out last week, it's available for free on their GitHub. They say, it's worth mentioning, they say it's free. It's like all of this is available for free, and it makes me wonder if it's going to become paid at a certain point. I could see them launching it on the Play Store as an APK that you have to pay for. But for now, it's free and in beta. And the big switch, the big shift in this 2.0 beta is that it becomes basically the easiest way to get a front end up and running on an Android device. It is built, this is the other big shift, it's built for dual screen devices. It was built for things like the AYN Thor, first and foremost, but the 2.0 update also now has a single screen mode as well. And I'll just say, from my immediate experience testing this, especially comparing it to things like my setup that I had before this, which was ESDE with the companion app, and Mjolnir, which allowed you to basically have, kind of contextual information on the bottom, like running ESDE while you were playing a game on the top screen. And things like the current build of Isu, which is out there and you can check out. Cocoon is like, not only does it blow them all out of the water in terms of its usability and its beauty and its ease of use, but in my opinion is the thing every front end has been chasing since front ends existed. Like, to me, Cocoon is the solve to the question of how do you get an Android device feeling like a console. And, that's not to say it doesn't take some setup and take a little bit of work to get to that point. You still need to be comfortable with tinkering a little bit. But at the pace that they're releasing updates, I think we're going to get there much faster. Like, the next update is adding a theme store. So you could just go and immediately download themes straight from the UI and not need to like go to Discord to download a zip file and extract it to a specific folder in your your Android files.
So I'll tell you why I like this. I obviously, both John and I, for a living, we see a lot of software on a weekly basis. We think about a lot of software, and we see and we test a lot of software. And we also live in an era where, because of AI, there's so much software being made now, not even by developers, but just by regular people and, tinkerers like the both of us. And so it's not just about like having software, because we are surrounded by apps and web apps and software. The real differentiator for me right now is design and taste. And this is the first, I don't want to throw shade at other Android front ends, but from my perspective, this is the first time that I've seen a front end on Android that is actually made with taste. And it's just, it's elegant, it's intuitive, it's powerful, but not overbearing. The fact that there are many, many options to configure and settings to configure, but it's not complicated, And that's because you can see that the people behind this project actually thought about like, how do we present all these things in a way that makes sense? Like, for example, you can configure scraping of gaming artwork from two different sources. You can use SteamGridDB via the API and also Screen Scraper. And these things are nicely presented in settings, and they actually guide you through the process of setting up an API key for SteamGridDB. And I only did SteamGridDB initially. I didn't do Screen Scraper. And just before doing the show today, I also wanted to restart the process with Screen Scraper because it missed some of my artwork from the 160 games or so that I have set up in my front end. And it was so easy. I just went into the settings, and there's a library metadata scraper section. You go in there, you enable the second source, and you start the process again. And you can see, do you want to force all games to be re-indexed, or do you just want to do the missing ones only? These little touches that, for me, make the difference when it comes to a front end, because it's got to be intuitive, but if I'm supposed to use something different from the stock experience of Android, it's got to be much more powerful and even easier to use. This is the first time that I'm finding something that has the right balance of many options, really powerful, UI that makes sense, done with taste.
My advice on this one is to run, don't walk. go get this now, because this is so good. And I think the design goes a lot deeper than just the aesthetics, which I think is what Federico was getting to a little bit, which is just the setup process alone. This was the easiest setup I've ever had. I already had ESDE on my Thor. So I already had, the micro SD card in there with the folders, with all the games in that kind of configuration. And if you have that already set up on a device, it makes it even easier. You just point it at the games folder, at the ROM folder, and it just does it. It's really, really super well done. I mean, there's all kinds of little touches. I mean, I think the fact that they do a very nice job of allowing the Android apps to be easily accessible, but not in the way too, which is something that I think a lot of front ends struggle with. Is like ESDE, you have to kind of download a special Android apps plugin in order to get your Android apps into ESDE, right? Whereas this, it's just kind of there and you can get to it easily, but it's not too hard.
Yeah.
Maybe this will show up on the screen.
So you set it up on the Thor.
Yeah, so I set it up on the Thor. I'm holding it up. I have the Wii U theme that's available in the Discord. That's like pulling from some design stuff from Isu, but it's worth mentioning on the bottom here, just to John's point, is the dock where you could just kind of put whatever apps you want. But
I love the dock feature. Yeah.
The dock is great. But these are like smart folders, which have all of my different game libraries in there. Here's like a favorites folder that has the games that I'm playing at the moment. But you could very easily just take an app and throw it here as well if you want to. So Vita, I'm in the process of setting up. Vita is one of the ones that like actually takes the most work to set up, because you have to generate a bunch of like text files and stuff and point them at the app. It's a mess. But for now, for the time being at least, I just have the Vita app here. But you could also take individual games and put them here as well, and that's so huge. And then also just little touches, like if I want to, like if I, like
pinch and zoom,
pinch and zoom to change the size of the apps on the grid, or say I want the stuff like the grid on the top instead of the bottom, I can just press a button and it just swaps them.
Yep.
Little stuff like that is just huge ideas that are just kind of presented as little customization options. And I think to your point, Federico, the thing that it gets right in terms of the thinking about how to present this to the user is that they want you to have fun with it, and they're clearly having fun with it as well. And this is my larger issue with even the Switch UI. Like Nintendo has moved away from this style of design, and I think it says so much that you have these 3 developers and whoever else is helping basically out Nintendoing Nintendo on these emulation handhelds, because the experience
Yeah, I was gonna say it has nice little music, right? When you're on the menu. Reminds me a lot of the Wii.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I love the chunky icons, the dock. So something nice that you can do, for example, is you can have your platform like default folders. You can also have the smart folders like Brendon mentioned. And you can also pin individual Android apps to the dock. So for example, I like to browse my library by platform or by smart folder, but also if I want to have a quick launcher for GameHub or for Google Chrome or for settings, you can just pin those applications to the dock, which is a genius idea, because yes, most of the time you probably want to play a video game, but for the occasional time where you need to browse the web, or I don't know, get a password from 1Password, or just have a shortcut to a specific Android application like GameHub, you can also do that. And I think it's so nicely balanced as an experience, and I still haven't set it up on my Thor. I just have it on the Odin 3, and it's super nice.
Yeah, what do you think about the single screen experience?
It's very nice. It's for the first time I'm using a front end that is not stock Android home screen, and I don't miss it, because this is exactly the sort of balance that I wanted. Brendon, where can people go find themes to make it look different?
Yeah, so right now you have to join the Discord.
Okay.
There's a Cocoon Discord that exists, and when you hop in there, there's a channel that's called Asset Repo. And you could just scroll through those, and they have a bunch of tags here, so you could just click on the tag that says theme, and it'll show you all the complete themes that you can download. And to be honest, there aren't too many at the moment that are completed. But the Wii U one with the Isu assets is as complete as it gets. I mean, it's beautiful. It's really plug and play. I gotta mention the other device last night that I was like, I wonder if this will work. That I installed it on, that I'm like all about, is the Ambernic RGDS. I just threw it on here.
Oh my god! Did
It
work?
is. Not only does it work, but it like suddenly makes this thing feel like a real handheld the way I think it was supposed to all along.
Wow.
I'm really, really, really blown away by it. So it's worth mentioning what I did first actually is I wiped the stock Android build that was on here.
Yeah.
I got the current build of Gamma OS because it adds a bunch of fixes to things like Drastic and whatever. But the thing about Gamma OS that always rubs me the wrong way is that it forces you to use Daigisho as the home launcher. And I was like, I wonder if I could just get Cocoon on here and just not ever open Daigisho ever again. So I did that, and it's perfect. Like, it really... I'm still not in a place where I would like really recommend this device to a lot of people, I think, if I'm being totally honest. But if you have one already, or if it's interesting to you and you really only want to play DS and below, definitely throw Cocoon on here. It's fantastic.
Nice.
What are you using it on, John? Are you using it on the Thor?
On the Thor, yeah.
Yeah.
It's great on the Thor.
It's great
On
the
those
Thor.
themes, Brendon, it does more than just the icons, right? What's in a theme?
Yeah, it's icons, backgrounds, music, and folder styles, I think, as well. So it's like, because there's, when you go into the customization options, on your own, like not even talking about the themes, the amount of little tiny options you have in terms of like, what is the corner roundness on each icon and stuff like that. Like the space between the icon itself and the border of the icon. Like there are a lot of little touches here and there, there's like certain like accent colors and things that you can choose between, and then certain themes will add new accent colors as well. So you have a lot of options, and I'm excited for the theme marketplace to open up. I think that's going to be really fun. The other thing that they're doing in the next update that they said, which I'm really excited about, and this kind of gets to what you were talking about, John. Like you and I already had ESDE set up, which made things really easy in terms of the folder structure. Yeah. But they actually are making it even easier, because what they're adding is a thing that says if you have ESDE already installed, it will scan for that.
Yes, which I did. That's what I did, by the way.
Figure out where your games folders are, but also figure out where all of the scraped assets are, so you don't need to do any scraping at all, and it'll just pull all of that stuff right from ESDE. That is so nice. Cool. So cool.
Yeah, that was another of one of like those really nice touches.
Also, scraping works in the background. Like you could have the thing closed, which basically which
I've
like
been
no
staring
other
at the screen for several minutes.
I have been so trained to just leave it alone while it's scraping.
Yeah, that's the Apple mindset.
Yes, I just let it run overnight the other day. Like or I guess last week when I first installed it, I was like, all right, I'm just gonna let it do its thing, and it scraped 2,000 games or something. And I got to be honest, I mean, the combo of SteamGrid DB and Screen Scraper together is almost perfect. Like there are very few games that it messed up. And your mileage may vary on that, but I have a pretty big library on here, and it was like really, really solid. There are a couple of games I went in and had to change individually, and for 3DS games in particular, I've been changing the icons out to the actual 3DS icons that would like show up if you had it on 3DS. Instead of what they're defaulting to, but for the most part, it's like really, really solid, and it looks beautiful.
Yeah, I really like how they do the splash screens too for the games when they show up.
Me too.
I mean, it looks really nice.
Yeah, one thing that they showed off in the reveal trailer for 2.0 that I'm really excited about, and it was actually the reason I installed it in the first place, is they're building a thing. It turns out it's not available yet, but they're building a thing. I forget what it's called. It's another pun on like Cocoon and insect stuff. But they're building a thing that makes it so if you're playing a game in another language on the top screen, it will live translate that game on the bottom screen simultaneously, which I'm so interested in. As a person who is, every day spending an hour or two studying Japanese, like the idea of having a Japanese game on the top screen and like being able to kind of cross-reference it and add stuff to like my study guide is really, really exciting.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Well, I have a whole thing for NPC XL. So I think for today, we're just going to stop the regular episode here, and we'll catch up on the news and other things next week. I really need to share something that I've done with you guys. And so we're going to do that in NPC XL. And yeah, it should be fun. It's about the coolers, I swear. It's about that. Yes. So if you want to listen to my latest adventures, that's going to be on NPC XL, which you can get on a Patreon. That's $5 a month. And you get a whole other episode of NPC every week. So, that's it.
Do it.
All right.
And thank you.
Thank you. Yes. All right, guys. We'll chat again next week.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.